Okay, so in learning objective 4, and to an extent in learning objective 5, we're trying to understand three principal concepts that are going to be true in economics that we're going to base all of our analysis on. Now, in the textbook, they kind of pose this question of how much does it cost to use Facebook? And the typical reply from someone would be that it doesn't cost me anything to use Facebook, right? It's a free service. I can sign up for free, I can use it for free, and there's no cost associated with it. Now, economists would disagree with that assertion. We would argue that it does cost something to use Facebook, and our discussion here will help you kind of understand exactly how you would calculate that cost. So, the very first principle of economics is what we call optimization. So optimization really simply states that people do the best that they can given the available information. So when I see you sitting in this class, well, I can't see you sitting in the class, unfortunately, but you're listening to this video, my assumption is that you optimized your use of your time. Okay, so you said, given the information I have about this class, the best use of my 5 minutes here is to watch this video on Learning Objective 4, right? So the fact that you're watching it to me says that you're optimizing. Now, that doesn't mean we don't make mistakes, right? So maybe you watch the video and you think to yourself, I really wish I had not watched this video. That doesn't mean you weren't optimizing. We learn over time and our decisions change based on how the information is changing, right? But given the information you had and your particular objectives, you optimized. The same would be true, I would say, the people that didn't watch this video, given their information and objectives, were doing the best that they can. So when we say optimization, all we mean is that people are behaving with some purpose, right? They're doing the best that they can with the resources that they have. Now, what makes optimization interesting and why we study it in economics is that because of scarcity, we face trade-offs, right? So optimizing is easy if I didn't have scarcity, right? I can buy whatever clothes that I want. There's always enough available. There's always enough food available. I always have enough time. I don't have to make any choices. But we know we do face trade-offs. So if I go back to this Facebook question, a trade-off would be that the more time I spend on Facebook, the less time I have for studying. Studying versus Facebook. Or Facebook and studying versus working. That's a trade-off that I face. Now, we typically use budget constraints to sort of summarize our particular trade-offs in any particular example. So, summarizes key trade-offs. So as an example, in my Facebook example, so if I just said I have available to me 16 hours outside of sleeping, then my budget constraint would say that those 16 hours have to be divided between Facebook and working. So that's plus Facebook hours plus working hours. Those two have to add up to my budget constraint. So it's just a simple way that we can use to summarize the fundamental trade-off I face. So in this case, I know that I can spend 5 hours on Facebook, and then I have 11 hours to work. The more Facebook hours I want, the less working hours I want. I want 6 hours on Facebook. That has to come out of my working hours now. Now I can only have 10 working hours. So that's my fundamental trade-off. An hour of Facebook is one less hour of work, and my budget constraint allows me to see that very clearly. Okay, so that's the first bit here with respect to optimization, is understanding that scarcity brings us trade-offs. And then in this case, I'm just noting that we can summarize my trade-offs via a particular budget constraint. In this case, I did a very simple one. Okay, so this brings me to the next important concept. We have scarcity, which means trade-offs, which means that everything has an opportunity cost. So I'm just going to define opportunity cost, and in the next video, we'll get into a little bit more of understanding how that works. So opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative. Okay, so the opportunity cost of using Facebook is the value of whatever your next best alternative would be. So if you spend an hour on Facebook, the opportunity cost of that 1 hour on Facebook is the value to you of whatever else you would have done with that 1 hour. What's the next best thing you could do with your hour on Facebook? That's the opportunity cost. So very logical progression of ideas here. We have scarcity. It's the fundamental economic problem. Limited time. That implies I have trade-offs. Because I have a trade-off, there is a cost that we call the opportunity cost to every action or decision that I make. So in the next video, we're going to think about or get a little bit more explicit about what opportunity cost represents and do a few examples and calculations of various opportunity costs.